My conversation today on Behind the Act is with Luis Espaillat. He's a recording session bass player based in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're talking about the impact of fear on decision-making and the significance of self-advocacy on our careers. I'm Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act with Luis Espaillat. Let me say that I've also perceived, not from you, but from other people, and like that there's this kind of like, we're the players, we like the artists, it's almost like a head pat. Like that's we don't have to put that in there. But
there's been a few of those for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, so you have to rally when you show up in a session and do a great job for the art, no matter if you like it or don't. How do you deal with that? And like, do you have things you don't like or?
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's always, and if you do this in any regularity, and what the beauty of it is that it's going to change all the time. One day you're going to do doom metal. Another day you're going to do like, very traditional country. The next day you do jazz or whatever, and that's always appealed to me. That's why I do it, because I've always loved all kinds of music, and now I get to do all kinds of music. And I've shown people and proven them that I do different kinds of music. To answer your question, the way I rally or kind of get my head in the game is something like, this isn't the best thing ever. I don't know. I never get that impression out of the gate. Like I never go like, oh, this is terrible. Like because I haven't given it a chance.
Yeah.
But if I get an impression and the other player's like, whatever, there's always a way to approach it, because you can, as I say, make your own fun.
Mm-hmm.
You can do so. This isn't good, but you know what? I'm going to make it good, or at least make the effort to make it good. And sometimes if you're given the leeway by the powers that be that, hey, let me try something completely different with this, unexpected. Yeah. And I've had that happen in situations where I've done something, flashy or whatever on the bass, and then even the artist goes like, oh, do that. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I've had that happen before, where even I've had a producer, this is a good story, where, when we start a recording session, usually with a group of people, the first thing is like they pass around the charts and we're going to listen to the demo and kind of make notes. And the producer comes out, guys, I'm so sorry about this. I am so sorry. I'm like, we haven't heard it yet. He already thought it was bad.
Oh, no.
And we got done and it was fine.
Yeah.
It was like, and he comes to me later, he's like, see, I told you. I said, bro, we've done worse than this. This is not that bad. And honestly, I can think of it like what I would consider, and it's hard for me to even say that because nothing was like that horrible for me, never.
Yeah.
Even the stuff that was not like that great by somebody's opinion, I still came out of there going like, no, I like what I did there. And I'm still proud of it. It's like, yeah, I played for people.
What is it about your playing that people hire you for?
That's a tough question. You might have to ask them.
Mm-hmm.
I think is like when you start to do this at any regularity and you're in the mix, as they say, everybody's good.
Right.
Everybody's great players, but
yeah.
It's our thumbprint, it's our signature. We're all different. Our approaches are different.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes happens with producers, why they might hire a certain person, they might hire me versus somebody else, or vice versa, because they've worked with me before and they know what I do specifically. Hey, bring me that thing. Hey, do that thing. I worked with a producer 2 days ago who I've worked with regularly. And I didn't realize it, but he says, you've got a signature thing you do on second verses. I want that. And seriously, song 2, he's like, hey man, do that thing. I learned it from you. I'm like, okay. So, but it's not just my playing or my approach musically, it is that, but sometimes it's how we communicate, how we interact.
Yeah.
You develop a rapport with people that you work on the regular, that it's like a shorthand or whatever. And sometimes might come naturally. Like, sometimes the first time you work with somebody's like, oh, you get me, you know? Or I'm able to deliver your vision. So I think that might be the best answer I can think of. It's really tough to think about sometimes why, but that's the closest, because everybody's good. It's like I could, and that's, you don't want to compare yourself to somebody else. But if you were to do so, it's like, well, he does that thing and I do this thing, and, that's why.
My perception is that you're really busy.
Thank you.
But I just want to acknowledge how I also perceive you as someone who has grit and follow up, and you're good at networking and connecting and doing social media stuff, and you're on top of it. So, what keeps you pushing? Do you still enjoy it? And what are you excited about?
I still enjoy it. What I'm excited about really is just the fact that I'm doing it. Full stop. It's like the fact that I'm even in the conversation, that I'm getting to play on a lot of these great records that's what I'm excited about. I get to do my craft, the thing that fulfills me, my art. That's the biggest thing. As far as everything else goes, it's like, how do I, continue with the grit, the social media, whatever? Well, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media because that's not the reason I got into it. When I was a kid, there was no social media. So it's not my driving force for me to become a musician. I've been wanting to be a musician, playing some version of music since I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
Piano lessons and whatnot. So that's kind of, I guess the social media thing, I've kind of developed a habit of it, if you will. I've also seen the results from it, which motivates me to do it. It's like I post a picture. Somebody calls me because they saw the picture. Oh, my best example is always like I play upright bass too, and I do remote tracks. So one day, client sends me, hey, couple upright tracks. Cool, got done. It was great. I start to pack up. Oh, I didn't post a picture. Should I post a picture? All right, maybe I should. So put the headphones back on, grab the bass, dude, click, there we go, send it off. I got 2 calls that afternoon. I was like, really? That's all it took? They're like, hey, man, I didn't know you play upright, even though I've tried to remind people that I do, but go figure. So that's kind of the motivating thing of social media. It's like, I guess it's a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Eventually, it's an advertising thing.
I think I'm starting to realize that no one that I know has a love relationship with social media, right? Like, so
Correct.
It is a location that people exist cognitively, period, for a lot of their life. So it's good to stay top of mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm definitely terrible at it. But trying to get better.
We always try to be better.
You've worked in New York and in LA. Why Nashville? Why do you stay here?
That's a good question. Well, I've been here quite a long time now, and what motivated me to move to Nashville initially, I went to college in Boston, Berkeley, and I was thinking about going to LA. Now, my motivating factor to go to LA really was because I really have a deep love for movie soundtracks since I was little, driving for. I tell people, who's your early influence? John Williams, James Horner, or Jerry Goldsmith, Alan Silvestri, that kind of thing. And that's where the work was. Well, then I had a buddy of mine come over in Boston and say, he was trying to sell me some furniture. And he's like, oh, you want to be a session musician? You should really look at Nashville. And so I went down with him and saw it and literally was convinced in 2 seconds flat. I just like the vibe better.
Yeah.
Now, could I have predicted what Nashville became in the scope of the world? No. Then when I first got here, Nashville is almost like the redheaded stepchild of New York and LA. Yes, we've great session scene already, great session players, but it was a little more truncated with either country or contemporary Christian and a little bit of everything else sprinkled in. But then we became the hip town, and now a lot of those LA guys moved here because we have the infrastructure. We've got the world-class recording facilities. We've got everything else. If you want a tour, we've got all the buses and the production.
And it's still like a tiny big town.
It is still.
Like,
it is. And I think everybody started to realize, like, no, the vibe's cooler. It's not as expensive. We're getting expensive. But we have all these other things. And the vibe was there. The people, the personality from before me was already in place, that we were more community-minded. And I think maybe the reason why that happens is because geographically we were easy to navigate. So we could be more social at the drop of a hat. Like, hey, let's go grab coffee. Cool, see you in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You're in LA. Oh, I'm in the Valley, dude. I'll meet you in 3 hours, and there goes my whole day.
Yeah.
They still do it, but it's a little more prohibitive in that sense.
Yeah.
That's just an assumption. I could be completely off base. But once I got here at an early age too, also from a personal standpoint, all the things that I did that you do as an adult happened to me here. All the life stuff. I met, the girl I married. I developed a family, got divorced here, bought houses here, had all the lifehood traumas happen here, So this really spoke to me as like, this is my place, it's my heart.
Yeah.
And, I have dear friends now that I've had years relationships with, both in the professional world and outside.
It's interesting that you throw the word traumas out there.
Yeah.
But you say it with joy because it still has an attachment to your home. I'm just acknowledging that because I have different traumas attached to where I'm from.
I'm sure.
And visiting brings up just different pieces that make me not want to be there as much. And I love Grand Junction. So it's Grand Junction, Colorado, and I'm from. But I love a lot of the people there. But man, like I'm like I still have things to work through with my therapist for sure.
I think we all do,
but with my like connection to that town. So like here I'm like I'm free and it's happy and people are nice and I'm doing the music thing or I'm pretending and learning how. I'm just kidding. But
it's never ending. We always are always learning.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to take a right turn for a second in the conversation. We were talking before. You know more about the music industry than I think anybody that I've talked to, and there's still like holes in that process of, talk to me about why you've been so diligent to understand how to go collect all of your payments from all the different things and.
Well, with that, in regards,
because I want to pay my bills.
That's obviously very simple. It's like, that wasn't the reason I got into this. Obviously, none of us really. It's like I got into this because I love music and I love to create music. Full stop. And like I did realize, and you hear the stories when you're a kid. It's like it's the music business, and people can screw you over and all that stuff. And then when I got into it, I'm like, oh my God, they're right. Full of shysters. But also good people. But the reason I learned was because, I was kind of instilled. My dad, my father's, was very business minded, and to him, same deal. He geeked out over business and finances. My dad was a doctor. He is an immigrant, immigrated here, got ensconced in becoming American and everything else. Great, and succeeded. Successful business. He did the whole thing, private practice, and the whole 9 yards. And he was also very much of like, hey, if I really care about this and a passion, part of the way I show that is really knowing what I'm dealing with, not only his skill set as a physician, but also how does that apply to the business of it. So I think some of that was instilled in me. But then also, when I first moved to Nashville, I had already kind of said, I'm going to be a side guy or a session musician, and the rock and roll dreams, whatever. I don't care. I just want to play music. Well, then the whole rock and roll dream came to fruition, like, hey, remember those dreams you had as a kid as rock and roll? You want to give it a shot? And I joined a band. We got signed to Atlantic Records. And I was already presented with a contract that was almost like a subcontract to the contract, because it's the individual player. And I was like, that intimidation when you get a document is like, sign your life away, kid.
Yeah. And in an industry that you're like, I don't know if I trust you.
Exactly. Because you heard the stories about people getting, screwed over. So I was reading I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe get a lawyer, and the lawyer kind of clued me on a few things. And he's like, yeah, cool, not cool, cool, not cool. Fix it up. All's well. And then even talking to the people at the label Atlantic up in New York, they kind of gave me little tidbits of, hey, kid, so what you got to understand is the sales, this and whatever, and I got a few bits of advice, which was great. And I just got fascinated by it too.
Yeah.
And then even after that, the things that happen, the after effect, royalty checks and everything else, I want to know where it's coming from. And then realizing, hey, have you looked over here? You might have some more money. Well, it wasn't about the amount of money. It was the principles like, well, it's my money. And even if it's like, hey, it's, $75. Well, that'll pay a bill. It's the principle. And I got fascinated by that a little bit to try to get in there because it was that motivating factor of like, man, if you just did a little due diligence, it'll yield dividends. And then even beyond the financial aspect was the credit aspect as well. Just like, hey, just make sure people are aware that was you on the record.
Right. That's so much to manage. Yeah. I realized how awkward the question was.
No, it's okay.
When I'm like, why do you care about making your money? I think the context really is more about making a statement and then getting your thoughts on it too. But like, I cannot believe how many people don't go collect all of their money.
Yeah.
And like, what's the cause of that? I mean, is it they don't know where to go, or I don't know.
I think a lot of that's true. A lot of times, like, because when you start to learn and dig deep, you realize what you don't know. It's like, it's not that you didn't know the answer, you didn't know how to ask the question, and that's applicable very much so, especially in this industry where things are changing all the time. And like, if you're in it for longer than a period of, say, 5 years, you're going to witness drastic change on how that money is made, how it's collected, what are you entitled to, what are you not entitled to, that kind of stuff. We've seen it happen so many times. But also, I think working in the arts, there's this whole thing about like the intersection of art and commerce. And this is applicable to anything art related, from movies, music, TV, visual arts, what have you not. There's a stigma too. There's a big stigma. It's like, hey man, you're an artist. You should know about the business then, because if you're too business geeky minded, then you're not going to be a good artist. You're not going to be the free spirit, Man, even with when we talk about another geeky topic, gear, our equipment is like, man, he's a great player because he doesn't care about what he's playing through. He's just going to make it sound good. Even those guys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of some of that, to answer the question.
I always say that one of my art forms is entrepreneurship. I mean, like I'd see it as an art. It's fun for me,
It is an art, but there's so many people that it's almost uncool. It's unhip if, hip players don't know anything about business and shouldn't, because it's like the thing with creating music. Like, people say, well, if you go to college to study music and get a music degree, well, you're going to think too cold and calculating. Not true.
Yeah.
I rally against that so hard, because it's not about the college, the education, whatever. It's the individual.
Yep.
If somebody comes out of university with a music degree and they play cold, that's not the university's fault. That's their fault. They chose to be that way.
Yep.
Or they lost the passion. They think too analytically or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm generalizing, but I kind of think that's the deal.
For people that haven't gone to college, can't go to college, didn't, whatever, especially for the music business, where would you suggest, let's say for session players especially, for them to go to get the information on how to collect?
There's a few. Well, the good thing is we live in the day and age of Google, and the internet. So it can be as easily as Googling. But if you're in it, is just ask some of the people you look up to. Yeah. The people that you admired, coming up or whatever, ask them, because they've already been through it. That's what I did.
Yeah.
I had to learn from all sources. I had learned from label people, producers, other session musicians that are older, been there, done that. Because they're also, especially if you go to, always, in any business, in any field, go to the guy the person that's done it longer than you, that you admire. Ask them. Yeah. Because they also have the years of experience behind it, and they can give you the reality check. Yeah, it says in these documentations this is what you should do, but here's what's real. You're not going to get that money, or you're going to get this money. That's what I do. That's always try to find mentors.
My research on the music industry side of it led me to like 1 million people that want to charge money to take a course on explaining it, and I spent a lot of money on those, and that half explained it, which did help me get to a place of knowing what questions to ask. But as you saw, like, I've got this like growing list of things to like fill in and make sure that I have.
Well, you educated me on a few of those things too. As much as I've gone into the deep end of like, where does the money come from? And we're like, oh, that's right. I didn't even think about to ask that question. Yeah. So that's how we learn. We kind of bounce ideas off each other, and we pick up things. You know this, I don't, vice versa.
Yeah. You talked earlier about having been now through a few pretty dramatic changes in the music industry. And, I think we can all acknowledge we're heading into another one with AI and, and everything. Yeah. But like, can you talk to me about, even like just tell some of the war stories if you want, about like what it was like before, Napster, and then after, and how you've seen the industry adapt? Because I feel like even coming from outside of the industry, like there's just this constant like almost exhaustion coming from the industry of like, how in the hell do we make our money on one end? But then I'm like, there's also just a ridiculous amount of money in the industry. But I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, it is. And the biggest thing that I've noticed, and again, I can only speak from my own personal experience, but I also was at a couple of those crossroads myself and benefited / didn't benefit and lost because of that. And the one thing that I've noticed, the blanket statement I'll say, is that the industry, the business side, and anything else that might be benefit to us people that make the sausage, getting the money is that they were slow to catch up to technology. It's getting better. People are like, even you mentioned AI, that's the latest thing, and people are already trying to put like, legislation in place to help stave it off.
Yeah.
Obviously, certain things are going to get away from us, and nothing you can do about it. But we're at least trying to be a lot quicker on the proactive side.
Tennessee was the first state to pass a law.
Yeah, there was the oh crap, I forgot the name of it.
Me too.
Elvis Presley, I think it was the thing, or what do they call it? That.
Okay.
Again, I apologize if I'm talking out of turn. It's a lot to
I'll
try
put a
to
link
keep
to the show notes.
Yeah, going like, this Luis had no idea what he's talking about. Don't listen to him. That kind of stuff. Again, all I can speak about is from my own personal experience, and like we all can, I'm sure somebody who has more experience can better speak to that or correct me. I'll preface that. That being said, for more stories, I had a record deal with a band. We got signed in 2001. The album came out in early 2003. And that was, if you look at your music history, that's when downloading started to happen. Napster came into being. Just predated iTunes, the 99 cent thing. Definitely predated streaming by a long shot. So when we were signed and we came to Thing, it was almost like, and we had a healthy advance because the money was still there from physical media sales. So the expectation was like, well, look, even if our lead single does, like a modicum, like if we're even a one-hit wonder, we'll recoup and we'll have something to talk about it. That did not happen. The song did okay, went top 10 in Germany, Japan, and Australia. But Napster happened. And the things like LimeWire and other downloading. So even I remember going to shows and somebody, because of what the band was, we already had a spread of like really young kids and some of their parents. Come to the show, come to the meet and greet. Hey, my son loves your song. He downloaded it, blah, 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 blah. Well, then that meant he stole it.
Yeah.
And they didn't know. The general audience is like, they thought they were being supportive and we're like, yeah, great. Now I can't feed my family.
Right.
Yeah. And it showed at the end of the day, we didn't make squat. The only reason that we saw any kind of substantial back end or anything worth to write home about is because the label and the infrastructure had enough wherewithal to go like, let's get you placed. So that's at least a couple songs got placed in about 4 or 5 major motion pictures, the summer of 2003, a few TV shows, and a couple video games. So any kind of back end, shall we say, is a result of that, for me personally.
Yeah.
Now, again, I will say this in full disclosure, I didn't write the songs. I don't have publishing, and that's fine. But I was a session player on the album, on the songs. So I get my piece of that. So that's how that happened. So that's what I saw. And I think maybe to address our other topic, that's the reason why I decided to kind of, what's going on here? Maybe I should investigate a little further.
Yeah.
And as much as I've gone the deep dive, I know well enough that I'm still like surface level understanding of what the people that do it day in and day out do.
Oh, yeah.
I still have to ask people this, that, and whatever constantly.
Right. I mean, like even the stuff that you just said, right? Like you said the word recoup. And for the people that are listening, that means for the royalties to pay back the money that the label put into it. So
the advance.
The advance.
Right.
And the advance is money that they give you up front.
Absolutely.
Right. There's all these terms. And you're like, I didn't own some of the publishing, which is part of what it means if you write the song, right? Like,
right. Well, you have, with the publishing and writing, so like there's the thing of the people who wrote the song have writing credits, whether it's like 2 guys wrote it and they split that part. That's one part of it. The other part is the publishing, the people who own the song, who have the rights to license the song or whatever, which sometimes can't be the same person, but a lot of times it's maybe 2 different things. So the royalties get split and go that way. Obviously, me being just the bass player, I had, not a dog in either fight.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
And then the idea of like, here's the master. So you're on the master, which means like the master recording. But
Correct.
By the way, we also call the process of making it sound better at the end mastering. It's like, is that connected?
That is correct. It gets so convoluted.
It's so funny.
There's a reason why people get degrees in this.
Right.
It's like when people say they go to like Belmont University here is known for their music business program. Good for them. But yes, that in and of itself, it's its own study that requires that much.
Yep.
The legal process, everything else. And that's great. And I feel like I've got a somewhat of an understanding because I had to live through it.
Right.
But, I still don't know half of it. And it changes all the time.
Yeah. What are your feelings about the impacts of AI? Like, if you were to guess how that's going to impact session musicians, producers, artists, everything?
That's a tough one because it is still at this day and age, and for the record, this is, what are we, August 2nd, 2024? Because obviously this will change by next year or whatever, and people have more hard opinions.
By the
and
time
more,
this is out in a week or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Even then, yeah, it's so fast, but even then, like people are you're gonna see the effects more because more time has passed. So my opinions of that, I know enough that I don't know. I'm like, I could offer an opinion, but I also know I don't have enough information, nor have I deep dived enough into that world. What I can guess or see is that I think, and because I've seen it happen, is when somebody, throwing out terms again, demos a song. And demoing means when I just throw, a rough recording of the song to be, and then later on we're going to record it for real with session musicians and whatever, and that's going to get released into the world. The way it used to work is they would do demo recording sessions here in town, and it was a lower pay rate, but hey, we're just going to crank it out pretty quick just so there is a fleshed out version of the song that the songwriter producer can kind of wrap their heads around it, and then, okay, now that we get an idea, let's go re-record it again and fine-tune it, make it the real recording out there.
Yeah.
Well, those demo sessions don't exist nearly as much as they used to, if at all. A lot of times what happened over the few years is you have producers that can program it. Multi-instrumentals like, that's good enough. You know what we're talking about. Well, now they can toss it in AI. You can just say, hey, AI, I want this to be a country song. Here's the lyrics, and make it in the style of blah, 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 and it spits it out.
Right.
So there's one way that I've already seen an impact of like, well, they're not going to hire players to flesh out a demo anymore, or even a producer to like, hey, can you program it up? Because they can just plug it into the computer and there you go.
Yeah.
I've heard so many different things about AI that people say, oh, it's taken over. We're going to lose our jobs too. It can't do the human element. It's still not as good or whatever. So who knows?
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm cautious about it, but I just kind of try to be, for right now, just stay the course, do the best job I can, and come what may.
I realized it's kind of like asking the early internet days, like, how's the internet going to change the world? Like, there's no way we could have possibly dreamt of where we land. In the film industry, and when I say film, I do commercial cinematography, like not narrative LA style work, right?
Right.
But so in that commercial space, though, I saw, I think it was 2008, the 5D Mark II came out, and people will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that. But the 5D Mark II came out, and it was the first time that like a stills camera can take video in a way that like makes it look like a movie, basically, and it just revolutionized cinematography and videography. But it also made all these people that had these expensive cameras, like kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say irrelevant, but it made it not as relevant to the customer that you have a nice, big, expensive camera. And honestly, they didn't look as good as like immediately. It almost like kind of quote unquote ruined the industry. Right. But I saw, through that, and I've just been trying to pay attention to, because now we've gone into like a different phase where we've got the phones that film absolutely beautifully, and really inexpensive mirrorless cameras for artists and for everybody. So it's like everybody has a camera that looks amazing. And the people that have kind of like kept going and sustaining in the industry, learn to adapt and just identify like, championing their own arts. But I think I'm sure every industry functions that way, though. It's like as technology is flipping,
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing is like technology is trying to, technology seems to progress at an exponential rate. Look no further than the price of computer memory and how like quickly big, small, and inexpensive it gets very fast.
Yep.
And the trick is those of us trying to keep tabs on technology and how it relates to our jobs. It's a tall order sometimes. We try to geek out about it and whatever, but also the more you dive into it, the more you realize you don't know.
Right.
And you're right. So that's a great example.
And what's new is not always better, obviously, especially in music. I mean, you were saying you travel with an LA2A and a like vintage-y,
Exactly.
vintage things. What excites you? Well, I just want to point out, like when you came over, you're like, you've got this like awesome rig that's portable to play bass, and you're like, hey, check this out. I've got all these switches and these outputs and these different things. I can structure however you want. And you have that like custom built.
Yep.
And clearly that excites you in some way, right? Like what,
Sure.
I guess what drives that intrigue for you?
Well, yes, I do have like a geeky side when it comes to tech. I do. I don't think that affects in a negative way my art. Because again,
I do. I judge you. No,
yeah,
I'm kidding.
people judge me all the
Yeah.
time. Why do you're a bass player? We need all that stuff for. Well, literally, it's like what you're referring to is I had a custom pedal board made. A lot of people in town here have had them made for sessions, and yes, I got a bunch of sounds and toys or whatever. But strip it down to the most basic thing. I have a tuner. I need a tuner. I have a volume pedal so I can just turn it on and off and do
Very
whatever.
complicated looking tuner.
Pretty much. Or like I had like some of the LA session guys that I admired had ginormous rigs and they just said, this is just an overblown direct input. That's all it is. It looks impressive. It's got a lot of pretty lights, but it's still the bass, But the reason I had that made and the way I had it made was really, I don't know, I guess in some way it was to, make me look good and not because of all the fancy pretty lights, but the flexibility because my job was I wanted to make the producer and the artist happy and want to hire me all the time and be flexible. So the custom router you're referring to, it's like, well, I know like, well, there's a producer I'm working with on Saturday. I know there's one output. I know he's going to want that. Not everybody wants this or whatever. So it's flexibility for me to go, hey, what do you want from me? I can deliver that. That's why I had that made. It's like, what do you want? Do you like me to send you 2 outs? Do you want me to send you a clean and a dirty? Do you want me to do this? It's all flexibility based.
Yeah.
But literally 9 times out of 10, I can tell you, I plop that thing down there and I barely use it. It's like, of course I use the tuner. Of course I use one output at least. But occasionally it's like, when somebody says, hey man, can you give me a blank and go, done. As opposed to, oh, I left that at home.
Right.
That's why, me being a bass player, but even guitar players do this too, and drummers we bring multiple instruments to a session. Drummers bring a smattering of different snare drums. It's flavors. You want to have them ready so at a moment's notice the producer says, man, I'm really feeling like I want to hear this. We can go, done.
Yeah.
And quick and be efficient. So that's why I had that built. It was literally it was a people pleaser is what it was. Not from a visual standpoint. It was literally like, what can I give you? This happened recently. It's like, hey man, can you make this? I know it's a little more of a rootsy thing, but can you make it sound dirty and rockish? Done.
Yeah.
That's it.
What do your best days and weeks look like?
That's a good question. My best days and weeks, well, because we can relate this to from a personal standpoint or from a professional standpoint. And yes, they sometimes cross over in each other. But generally speaking, when I answer questions like that, it's like, well, we got to take it from either thing. So a good week for me always is just like any day that I get to make great music with good people is always a good day. I don't care what it is. It's like when I walk into a room, a session like, let's say on a good week, it's like Monday morning, we're going to do a 10 a.m. session. That's the best way to start a week for me because I know it's like, I'm an early riser anyway. So to go be ready for a 10 a.m. session is nothing. It's like casually get up, make some coffee, do whatever, or even not that because, the studio's going to have good coffee. Get my stuff together, check a few emails, and then, get ready and walk out the door, and go there and know that I'm going to walk into a room, into a great studio. But really, it's the people. It's just so warm and fuzzies. It's like, oh, I love these people. Not only are they the best players in the world, but they're the nicest people. We're going to joke and have a good time and make good music. So getting to do that multiple times over the course of a week is a good week for me. I used to tour a lot more. I used to be on the road a lot more. I'm definitely not that guy anymore as much. Doesn't mean I'm opposed to doing live shows. Doesn't mean I don't do live shows still.
Right.
So sometimes it might be like throughout the week, it's like, oh, I got a few sessions peppered in, but there's time to go hang with friends, at night, let's go grab dinner or whatever. But then maybe it's like, oh, I got to go zip off and fill in a date like on a Saturday night because somebody's bass player broke their arm or got COVID or whatever. And I can pop off and get my yayas by playing a live show with a great artist that I respect and getting to play a few hits with them. And like, oh, I got to go play those hits with them. That's a great week for me. That's really, it's really just having, a nice solid, what I would consider a busy week of making great music.
Yeah.
And then nothing better than that. And then like satisfied to like pack it up, done at the end of the day, and have a nice social life, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
or my son, hanging with my son, or some of my kids or family, and doing that. That's great.
Right.
It's satisfying. You have to have, from a emotional, psychological standpoint, it's like you have your personal life and your professional life, and I do recognize the separation, even though one can affect the other. But having that balance of both, like having a healthy social life, whatever that means to you, because that is individualistic, and then having a good professional life that you can pay your bills, but you get a satisfaction from the job, not just a paycheck, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're very fortunate. I mean, had this conversation because my birthday was early this weekend. I got to hang with a bunch of my friends that are also great players, and we said it. We're like, man, we are so lucky. We get to make music day in, day out at the highest level. One guy in particular said, man, you might have an off week. The sessions might not be the top tier stuff, but dude, we're in the NBA. Full stop. Whatever that seems like, is like we account for, if you do this at any level psychologically, you can count yourself as a fraction of the percent of the people that try to do this. You've made it. You're successful. I don't make $1 million a year. Doesn't matter.
Right.
The fact that my job is to make music with great people, it's a dream, dude.
Amazing.
And I get to pay my bills with it.
What have you learned in the last few years that like how is your perspective different on life than it was like 3 years ago?
Well, you hit a thing with me personally, because you're talking about a time in my life where things happen, like divorce, surprise divorce, and that obviously anybody who's been through that can tell you how that, even with the best of intentions, will upend your life emotionally.
Yeah.
And even logistically, because now different households, and especially if there's kids involved. I guess I'm trying to answer the question as best as I can, but you're saying like how has it changed for you? Is that what you're asking? Like, how does the perception change?
Like what revelations have you had that like what have you learned, and how are you like? I wish I would have known that, or had more peace there, or I don't know anything.
Oh, of course, that's everybody I think goes through that in life, and it's all looks different because it relates to your own personal experience. Your own personal. We talked about traumas or whatever in your personal life. Family issues, divorce, whatever. Me personally, I think I'm getting better in what I've learned, and learned the skill is to not sweat the small stuff. I've had a chronic issue with that for my entire life. I sweat the small stuff like nobody's business. I still do. I'm still learning. I feel like I'm better about it.
Do you give yourself, okay, so I'm going to acknowledge that like your sweating the small stuff is also the thing that I'm appreciating about you on the music business, like diligence, right? Like you figured out, oh, I need to send this type of letter of direction to get this thing, and I need, or whatever, right? Now that, I think it's also easy to attach to, oh, I'm like way uptight and OCD about way too many things. And so there's like a guilt that comes along with that, like when you're functioning, I just want to say, like, I think it's, in my opinion, I think it's very healthy to give yourself a break about being uptight.
Sure,
that's
of course.
Funny, yeah.
No, that's the best thing to do, because you need that for your own mental sanity and peace of mind. It's one of those things that we know that as grown, well-adjusted, so to speak, air quotes, because we're artists, we're not well-adjusted, grown, well-adjusted adults.
Yeah.
We understand, like, hey, we're sweating the small stuff. We know it's small stuff. We know in the moment we're small stuff, but there's still that emotional component that we're like, yeah, but I know, like, people always say the term, this too shall pass. Whether it's traumatic, like with me, obviously going through that kind of stuff or whatever, it's like, don't worry, you're going to get better. You're going to feel better. I know that. I want to feel good now.
Yeah, exactly.
What can we do about that?
Right.
I've going to therapy, even, like, same deal. It's like, that's one of the biggest thing I talk to my therapist about. It's like, yeah. And even he's like, okay, let's work through this. How do we get you to understand enough to kind of ease your mind and not let those emotions overtake you. You know, because when we sweat the small stuff, the emotions do get in the way, and that will affect our job performance, our interactions with people, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a tough call.
Do you hide your emotions from yourself a lot, you think?
I think I have been guilty of that. I mean, there is a lot of part of me that, and people will tell you that know me, I will wear my emotions on my sleeve. People say, I can read it on your face. I'm like, I didn't think I was, but they can. As far as hiding it from yourself, yes, I know that there's things that I'm guilty of doing that. And you should really be honest with yourself. You know, it's like you have to, because that's the first step to taking care of that problem, to rectify it. But we still want to push it down, you know, like, because we think if we hide it, we don't have to confront it. You know, it's like, no, I'm not really mad right now. We're like, no, you're mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Allow yourself. My therapist said that. He's like, allow yourself to be angry.
Yeah.
Allow it, because, he had a great phrase, and I was going to use it today too. But it was like, if we hide it, if we don't address it, it's not going to go away. It's going to linger.
Yep.
It's still there. But if you address it, you can do whatever, and it might, you know, we can push it to the side a lot more, or, you know, rectify it as best as we can.
Yeah. How do you explain what therapy is to someone who's never been in therapy?
That's a tough one. Well, I mean, I say that because I can tell you what it is. I'm just trying to sound intelligent about it. I know it's not going to come off that way. Therapy is really, when we talk about mental therapy, we're talking about our emotions and how we cope about that, because the component is mental. Yes, it is. Now, there's a lot of things that are mental that we can chalk up to chemistry and everything else, whether you're bipolar, manic depressive, whatever. Those things exist. But even if you don't have that issue, there's still other issues, and we all, like, you know, like personalities, we're not black and white. We're shades of gray, and you might feel a little different about how you handle sadness than I would, and vice versa. And therapy is all about addressing, you know, therapists study human behavior, and how behavior is not just how people react, but how you compartmentalize and how you process. So a therapist is there for you to go like, okay, you vomit your emotions, you vomit your thought process, what's going on in your life. It's not just, they're asking, like, hey, what's going on in your life? Oh, I got divorced, I had a bad date, blah, blah, blah. They're not asking because they want to know. They're asking like, okay, how are you processing that?
Right.
You know, how are you, you know, because like, yeah, you're not the first guy to get divorced. You're not the first person to have crappy dates. You know, that's nothing new. You're not the first person to sweat about your job and your profession. Come on, everybody does that. Let's talk about how you're going to cope with that. How are you going to react to that? Because as I said before, the professional side and the personal side can be two separate things, but they can inform each other.
Yep.
You know? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, before I did therapy, I was like, I'm not going to ever meet someone that is smart enough or know my situation as well, and like and think about it. Like, that was just like totally the wrong understanding of therapy anyway. I also lucked out and got an amazing therapist right away.
Yeah.
But I just remember, like, I just was like, I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be, you know, it's like all the things. It's like, it's so not that. I got like addicted basically to therapy.
Well,
like,
it's good. I think now I've learned a lot more. Again, one of those things with time and getting a better understanding of those things, that everybody could benefit from therapy. Even just not from a professional. Let's look at it this way, like you with your friends. Getting the whole thing, getting things off your chest. It's amazing how much, just like, you're not looking for an answer. You're not looking for somebody to fix something for you. Just like, hey, I'm feeling this. Boom. I'm better now. I just need to get off my chest. I used to do that with my now ex-wife. Like, she had a great phrase about it, because I would vent about something. And obviously, being a supportive partner, she's like, you know, what you should do is this, or blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes that's not what I needed. So she had to learn to go like, oh, do you want me to offer you advice, or you just want me to listen?
Yeah, that's very smart.
It's very smart. So I learned that from her, from me being an individual, to my friends going like, hey, do you need to just vent to me, or would you like me to offer my viewpoint? You know? Because people, it was frustrating to me, like, if I'd offer up, oh, I'm venting, blah, blah, and they're like, well, you need to do this. Like, I don't want to hear that right now. That's not helping me. I'm upset. I just want to tell you about it. So I consider that therapy. You know, and I try to be that to my friends too. Is like, hey, and sometimes my friends have done that. then they apologize for it. Man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dump that on you. I'm like, no, it's good, dude. Sometimes we just need to get off our chest.
I feel like I have a lot of deep conversations with people.
Good.
And friends of mine, but I have to often be like, I am not a therapist. So just remember that my advice that's coming back to you, it might be dumb and as ignorant as yours is, because like,
well, and it's not
like, let's talk through it. Like you say, like openly, but like, know that there are more qualified bass players than I am a bass player, right? Like in the therapy way, like
I'm a licensed bass player. So,
there you go.
Exactly. That's a great point. But you can say that, but that doesn't you don't want to discount yourself if you're the listening ear because your opinion is just as valid.
Yeah.
And they know that.
Yeah.
They know it's like, well, here's my 2 cents, but that's based on your experience. But your friends know that.
Totally.
They know who you are.
Well, yeah. I mean, I especially say it if it's getting pretty, dark. Some of the conversations.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, hey, like this is time to get in with somebody. Like I'm not your person, but I'm an ear. As a session player, your job day in and day out is to go make people happy. And so my question is, and I witnessed it. You like rallied on even like we kept joking about tuning the B string down a low G sharp, F sharp.
We went all the way down. Yeah,
I think F sharp at one point even.
Oh, that's right, we did.
One last note or something like. And it sounds so cool, but I'm just like ridiculous. Like, but it was so fun. And but I saw you, and then again, like you have the board ready to like please this scenario, what we need to be. My question is, are you good at self-advocacy, like protecting like doing that for yourself?
I'd be amiss to say that I was 100%.
Yeah.
I think there's some moments where I think I've done well for myself, and I've done that. And we talked about like going down the business rabbit hole. I advocated for some of that stuff sometimes in my own career, much as chagrin to the people I was dealing with. They're like literally like I got yelled at, or some of my other people I was doing was like, hey man, don't rock the boat, don't spoil this for us or whatever. But then the end result was like, hey, you're welcome. We're getting extra money because of this.
Yeah.
So some cases, yes, but some cases, no. I feel like that's still a learning process for me. Sometimes even let's take the session thing, for example. I could be in there. And a lot of times when you're in a recording session, even though we have the producer who's the director and the artist, we're trying to bring their vision to life the way they want it. Everybody from the floor in the positions is like, hey man, what if we did this? What if we did that? And that's what I really enjoy about working in Nashville, because that's kind of what we do. But we also know how to do it, going like, hey, does that fit your vision? Are we on the mark? Should we do that? Mm-hmm. So sometimes I feel like I don't speak up sometimes because I don't want to. I'm like, it's not my gig. I'm just going to play bass, and my job is to bring their vision to life the way they want it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get sheepish. I just kind of sit back and just quiet and wait for them to tell me what to do.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But in life, yeah.
In life, yeah. Well, that's kind of goes hand in hand with it. I think that same behavior, that's just me, does bleed over into the personal life. I definitely can. Hindsight's 2020. If I knew what I then, if I knew now what I knew, if I knew then what I knew now. Sorry, there's a phrase.
Yeah.
I think I'm like, man, I would have advanced so much quicker, or I would have done better at that relationship, whatever it is. There's been many times where I haven't spoken up for myself. I was, when I was younger, I was definitely more sheepish, introverted, or whatever. And then somewhere in late high school, I still remember this, just a switch flipped. I was like, boom, all right, I'm going to start speaking up a little more. And that helped. And I felt so much better about myself.
Yeah.
So my self-confidence got there. Doesn't mean that was the be-all, end-all. I didn't become like Guy or whatever, but I definitely did better.
Yeah. And
I still feel like a lot of growing happened and could still happen and should still happen for me in that capacity. So no, I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well, do you advocate actively and loudly for other people a lot?
I try to. I really try to. For some people, I feel like, again, I could be better about that.
Yeah.
Whether that's another musician that should be on the session or an artist that I believe in, that I'm like, man, why isn't this person bigger? They're so great, And I try to advocate as much as I can, because who am I? I'm just a bass player, as I say. I downplay myself. And yeah, I'm in the business, I work it, but I'm not in the position to blow it up as much as some other people. I'm not an influencer. I'm not this.
Yeah.
But I like to. I definitely like to. Is if somebody I believe in, whatever that may be, even on a personal level, man, that's a great guy. It's like, he's single. Why don't you go date him or whatever? That kind of thing. I try to, because I've seen people do that for me.
Yeah.
And I've been very appreciative of it. And like the reason I have a career of this stature is because people did advocate for me.
Yeah.
People did put their reputation on the line and hired me to do it, and it worked out. And that's the reason why we're able to do that. I mean, we have to support each other.
Yeah. My therapist one time pointed out to me, I guess just to give the background, I tend to be very hard on myself. And she was just like, if this was somebody else in the exact same scenario, would you be giving them grace? I was like, oh yeah, all the grace in the world. Like, and she's like, just think about that for a second, like basically self-advocacy has been difficult for me. Like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like, clearly, like there's studio, stuff to like advocate for art, and that's Carrie being like, yeah, let's do it. And, having the support and everything, but my art though, like I haven't done that for my art, and I've been trying to learn how to do that more so that I'm not the word we said earlier, cringe, right?
Right.
Like, and which is an interesting thing. So I don't know, I'm circuitously getting somewhere, I think, but
No, I got you.
Yeah, no, but so like with the cringe idea, just throwing this out there. By the way, the thing you showed me, like we literally both, I mean, maybe we won't mention who it is, but like we both were like, is this joking or not?
Oh,
And,
right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it's
I remember that.
and, well, I don't know. I lost track basically.
No, it's
but,
okay.
I mean, but I guess I do want to ask the question on the cringe side, like, and the judgment side, like, how do you function in that? Because it's like, it's such a hard thing, like, because judging other people for their art,
Of course. Yeah,
But-
that's very difficult because, like, here's the thing with art, it's very subjective. We talked about this earlier, but there's this thing with art, and obviously we're talking music because that's our common element, and that's what we do. But there's other things, other art that's the same way. It could be visual arts, it could be movies, it could be whatever. And it's very subjective, which it's supposed to be. Art is, it's the job of art, in my opinion, is to elicit an emotion. Good, bad, indifferent, all. It's art. It's like, if it makes you cry, it's art. Makes you laugh, it's art. Makes you mad, it's art. Makes you think, it's art. And people have a tendency to, it's a personal thing. So their opinion, because it's their world, it becomes, if they like it, it's good. If they don't like it, it's bad. The problem with the cringeworthy thing is like when people say, that's bad. Well, no, it's not bad. It's you don't like it. And when you're making art, when it's your art, that's very personal. That is like, you are just, like I said, it's emotion. So you're spilling your emotions for all the world to see. You're exposing yourself.
Yeah.
And I think because you become your own worst critic, you're more concerned about, we all tend to get more concerned about what's the world going to think about this, whatever. And at a certain point, you just have to put it out there and not worry about cringy. I had that happen to me during COVID, because everybody always asked me, do you write your own music? I'm like, I cringe when I do it because I work with so many world-class songwriters that I'm like, oh, I can't compare to that. Yeah. Anytime I write lyrics, they seem so trite to me. Well, during COVID as an exercise, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I don't care what the world thinks. It's an exercise. I wrote a song, recorded it, and released it. And people have been very positive about it. Now, in hindsight, I've had a couple of years since I put it out, and I'll go back and listen to especially the lyrical content. The musical content, I'm very happy with. The lyrical content, I'm like, actually, that wasn't so bad.
Awesome.
It's not as bad. But yeah, it's like, you just need to do it. Like with your thing, it's like you talk about, it's my thing and I'm kind of cringeworthy and da-da-da. I don't think it's that. I think it's just get it out there. And when we talk about viewing other people's art, some people get into a very judgy mode, and you're allowed to. It's it's a free world and it's art. You're allowed to have your emotions that side. You're allowed to process it the way you want. We talk about songwriters like, hey, that album or that song is going to hit you different than this guy. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
The one thing that I like to advocate, speaking of advocating for, is don't say it's bad because you don't like it. If you don't like it, that's fine. It's not my cup of tea, but and I trust. Well, I respect it. I respect that. There's a skill. There's a thing that's for that. That's really good. Not my cup of tea, but
Right.
might be yours.
And even a lack of skill. Like
Even a lot. Well, there's
and
that
throwing
too.
it out there. I mean,
Well,
yeah,
the thing is, we have you ever heard the term like we say performance art? There's a good buzz term.
Yeah.
It's more shock value. Now, again, is it art? Of course it is. It's eliciting an emotion. You go like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah.
And is there a skill set to that? If we look at the nuts and bolts, that might be a little too geeky. We're like, well, the skill that I developed, in my experience, you don't need to do that because you're just like the equivalent of me playing bass versus I'm just going to throw the bass on the ground and let it make noise. That's kind of performance art. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's like, well, what happened? They're like, oh, it's terrible. It elicited an emotion.
Right, there you go.
That was my emotion going, there you go. Did its job as art. Sometimes even in the visual world, I have my ex-wife's sister works in New York City in the art world. And we've had those discussions because I made a joke about like, I like this art. And she's like, how can you call that art? I'm like, well, sometimes, you look at the Mona Lisa or something like that. It's like, it's not the skill that it took to draw those eyes. No, I just like that shade of blue. That's a cool shade of blue. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yep.
It's good art.
Yeah.
A wine taster even told me the same thing. I use this as an example. They're like, we can get into the weeds about like $100 bottle of wine, a $5 bottle, whatever. Mm-hmm. He's like, do you like that wine? Then it's good wine.
That's the way we were talking coffee earlier, right?
Exactly.
Different cultures.
Oh, yeah.
Love different things. And like to me, coffee is nostalgia. It's the like present nostalgia of the day. Like I know my coffee. I like my coffee. And other people, some people like it, some people don't. That's fine,
Exactly.
What do you want the world to think about you? What do you want them to know about you?
I don't know. I feel like if the first things I would say would make me sound extraordinarily narcissistic, I think that would apply for anybody.
Because I asked you a question that's asking you to talk about yourself. But,
exactly. It's like,
yeah.
I think, what I would want the world to think of me and know about me, I think is what anybody would want them about themselves. You want to be accepted, liked, thought positively about. Mm-hmm. That aside, what I would want people to know about me is just know who I am. It's like, again, you might not like me, you might like me. And that applies to me as a person and as an artist. I want them to know that this is what I do. I've, developed a skill set. I make music. Please call me and let's make music together kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hire me, yay. I just, I'm trying my best, and I know that nobody's perfect. I definitely am not. I'm not saying at all. I want to treat people with respect, and I want them to treat me with respect. Treat people like you want them to treat you.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very simple concept, and we're like, yeah, we've heard that a million times. But the difference is like, yeah, but let's really put that into practice. And I strive every day to do that.
Are you good at firing people that don't treat you well?
No. I don't think I'm good at that at all because I hate making people feel bad. I hate it. Obviously, it's an impossible task not to do that. I was telling my youngest kid about that concept, trying to be a good dad. It's like, hey, the world is this. Mm-hmm. You can be Mother Teresa, and somebody's going to hate you on principle. Full stop. Not just dislike, full out hate. Yeah. I hate you because of that hat. I hate you because of this. I hate the sound of your voice. I hate the sound of my own voice sometimes. It's what idealistically, sure, I'd love everybody to love me. Who doesn't want that? Mm-hmm. I know the reality is never going to be that.
Yeah.
But what I want people to know of me, I don't know, this is just, my name is this, I do this.
So other than bass playing, what do you do for fun?
I like long walks on the beach and men who aren't afraid to cry. No, that's a good question, honestly, because there is other things. Obviously, I'm a big music geek. Mm-hmm. That's why we all are. We're passionate, and that's why I think we're successful at it. Outside of music, other interests I've had for years is, I was a big sci-fi, still am a big sci-fi geek, and that's both in film, books, everything in between. I do other activities I like to do. I've been, more seriously in the last 5 years, I'm a scuba diver. Something
Congrats, that's cool.
Yeah, thanks. It's fun. I did start to do that back in 8th grade. I was starting to pursue getting licensed in 8th grade, and I never finished it then. Let it go. Years later, my wife at the time starts to show interest. I'm like, this is something we can do together. So for Christmas one year, I said, I'm getting us certified. And we had a blast. And I found another thing, another outlet that made me feel good. And it was very satisfying and has so many aspects because even though, you can't talk underwater, it's a very social sport.
Yeah.
It's all about, you travel somewhere, I've dove in Hawaii, a few different locales in Mexico, Cozumel, Roatan, Honduras, Bimini, Bahamas. These are places I've gone. And every time it's the same thing. You get on the dive boat and there's people from all parts of the world on the boat with you. Hey, where are you from? Cool. And then we all go do the dive, come back and look, did you see that cool thing or whatever? I love that. That's it gives me the warm and fuzzies. It's an excuse to be social and just we don't have to talk about anything else other than, hey, you and I are here now. Let's talk about now. And it's also that Zen aspect of communion with nature, if you will,
Yeah.
But it's really just seeing cool things. Everybody talks about to me when they ask me, it's like, aren't you afraid of name it, sharks, dying, drowning, whatever. Sure. Once it's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
But I tell everybody the best way, and it also teaches me to confront fear. Because I have a million things of fear. I mean, we all do, but I could name check a lot of things. But confronting the fear makes it go way faster than anything. And diving has taught me that. Because going in the water, being 100 feet down, knowing that, like, this is not my world, it's their world, and they could do whatever the hell they want to me, the wildlife, which they don't because they're just, whatever, I'm going to mind my own business. The last dive I did, I dove with the great hammerheads in Bimini. There was 3 or 4 16-foot great hammerheads swimming this close to my face. They were fine. They were like dogs. They just kind of, hey, you got any treats for me? Nope, see you later.
Right.
And but as soon as I knew this is the first time I'm purposely going to dive with these giant sharks bigger than me. The moment I got in the water, it melted away. I was like, we're good.
Awesome.
So I love that. Outside of that, I love hiking. I've got into that. I've always hiked, not just the typical hiking trails in nature, but when I was on the road a lot more, I would do hiking, what I call urban hiking. I'd love to hike in cities. Chicago, you just turn me loose, I'll hike the whole day. New York City, no brainer. That gives me a sense of hiking or a sense of peace as well. The typical spending time with my kids, having fun with my kids, but even traveling with, like, I took my youngest kid to Canada in March. And because he wanted to go ice skating in maple syrup, we got to do all that stuff.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and I've really fed, I've become more of an extrovert. I mean, I'm an introverted extrovert, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I do thrive. Something that my wife at the time observed about me in social situations is like, you do thrive off that energy. And it's not just you talking, it's other people talking with you and having that energy kind of build up between each other. I do thrive off of that. All I have to say is, because you're asking me about, like, what do you do outside of music?
Yeah.
I like to just go out and be social sometimes. It could be with other musicians, but just other people that have nothing to do. Sometimes I love that fact. I love the fact that I'd never mentioned that this is what I do. And talking to people, like when I went on the cruise and everything else, just like, here we are.
Yeah.
Do you like that pasta dish? Yeah. How about you? I love that stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of, in a nutshell, like me on a personal level, what I find myself more often doing.
I love it. What are you excited about for you in the next 5 to 10 years?
More of the same, in a good way, more of it. So as I was telling somebody about the session thing, that they like, oh, you're working more and more. It's just like, I tell people, it's like, when you get to do something cool, you just want to do more of it. Yeah. So obviously the frequency of work like that, you got to treat it like you're an independent contractor, which you are. So some weeks you're going to be slam busy. Some weeks you ain't going to have anything.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that doubt of, oh, is my career over? People stop talking. No, you have ebbs and flows. So obviously I could always wish for more regularity in that. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. But I'm excited to just make more music. I'm excited that, tomorrow I get to do it again, with some of, good friends and great players. I'm excited. Now I'm planning another trip. I'm trying to figure out another excuse to where can I find a hole in my schedule and get out of Dodge and maybe go to a different country and get back in the water and dive, or just see another country, or whatever it is. I'm excited about that stuff. I know that kind of sounds a lot very short term.
No.
And and unfortunately, I know people have the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. For me personally, I could do that, but I find that I've thrive on going with the flow a little bit. It all works out in the end.
My goal has been to build myself a reality of what I want to do every day for the rest of my life.
That's a great way of putting it.
I for the most part, I'm functioning in that now. I'm not an extroverted person. I'm very introverted, and so this forces me to have conversations, doing the podcast stuff.
So this is your therapy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, seriously, basically, yeah, exactly. You said that you function in fear a lot. What has scuba diving taught you about addressing your fears, and what keeps you up?
Yeah, what it's taught me about it again is face it. It's one of those things you just have to blindly, jump off the cliff.
Not literally, by the way.
Not literally, unless you got a parachute attached to you. Even
That's
that,
fair. Yeah.
Even that,
base jumping is something I'm afraid of. So.
Oh, I don't blame you. I think it looks cool, but I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
No, it really has. There is a certain thing that you can apply to everything mentally, which I did with scuba and other things. I'll give you another example. Going to several years ago, going to the Middle East and going to war zones to play for the troops, USO stuff. The first one I ever did was back in 2008, I want to say, and we went to Kuwait and Iraq. And, going to forward operating bases, and everybody was just, it's the voices of everybody else who's not doing it. Aren't you afraid they're going to shoot you or whatever? And again, it's like, sure, I had a healthy fear because I never did it. The moment I got there, melted away because I saw the reality. Also, it helps that when, one of the greatest fighting forces in the world is your buddies. And they're armed to the teeth and professionally trained. They're like, we got you. You're good. I'm like, I'm good here.
Yeah.
But it really was just don't overthink it. Just go. If, obviously don't make stupid decisions, but go. It's like with me, it's like even as much as the medical profession has been ever present in my life because it's for generations in my family on my dad's side, there's been doctors.
Yeah.
My ex-wife, also is in the medical field. You would think with all that around me that I wouldn't think twice about it. I hate needles.
Right.
I get so anxious about even going to get a flu shot, which I do. But get my blood drawn, something as simple as that. I'm just like, I sweat, on the ride over there. I'm just like, oh God, this is gonna happen. And then, but the moment it's like, just don't think about it. Don't overthink. Go, do it. Go. And as soon as it's there, it's like, oh, I wasted so much energy fearing something that was so simple, And obviously, we get past that, and the fear comes back. You have to repeat the process all over again. So the biggest thing that scuba diving has taught me that I was able to do and get into satisfaction is literally don't let your fears stop you from doing whatever it is, living life.
Yeah.
That applies to the music industry because I've spoken to so many people that didn't make the leap. That's the biggest thing. It's not that they weren't good. They didn't make the leap. Getting to tour and getting to a point where people know you to whatever degree, they ask you the questions. Man, I want to do what you do for a living. How do I get into the scene and become a session? Well, first of all, how about you move to Nashville or move to wherever it is? Go to the scene.
Yeah.
Man, I can't do that. I'm in Oklahoma, and I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I can't help you, man.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's literally not that they couldn't do it. It's like, dude, you can figure it out. You can move here. It's a fear. What about my family, whatever? You can go travel. Everybody moves away to work.
Yep.
Like, it's not like you're going to stay in the same small town the rest of your life. It's okay. Your mom's going to be fine.
Yep.
She'll come visit. You'll visit.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, when we moved here, we had the conversation about one day after Christmas, 1 or 2 days after Christmas, and we were like, yeah, we should move. And we're going to move to Nashville. On February 1st, the boys were in school here.
Wow. See?
We were like, we have to go. Like, just, I mean.
Well, at a certain
I
point.
think it was a pressure cooker building up. Like, it was time. We were like,
It was time. You realized
we
that.
just hadn't, like, talked about it. Everybody's like, I didn't know you were planning on moving. It's like.
Right. Well, good for you for recognizing that. See, that's another big emotional hurdle is people don't recognize that and don't address it and don't follow through because of fear.
Yeah.
Very simple. There's always that thing like, oh, I couldn't do that. That's a lot of work. Life is a lot. Just freaking do it. You know, me planning a trip to go wherever, it's like that cruise dive trip I mentioned earlier. Is like, I did it within a 2 weeks notice. I was like, nope, got to do it.
Good job, dude.
You know,
that's awesome.
And I've had family members go like, how did you do that? So close to time. I did it.
Yeah.
You're an adult. You can figure it out.
Yep.
So as far as moving to here, it's like you have to, you're going to be satisfied because you never want to go shoulda, coulda, woulda. You don't have that regret in your life.
Yeah, well,
not
on the move. And I'm trying to eliminate that regret by releasing my first song like you.
Do it,
you know,
yes,
like,
do it. Yeah, because you have to get it out there because even if it's not, don't have expectations that it's going to, maybe it will, but, if it blows up or not, just do it for the sake of doing it.
Exactly.
Especially the release aspect. It's like, that's like an exercise. Like, well, I got it. I'd give it a shot.
Yep.
And you're going to feel so much better once you do it. Even if it's not whatever, who cares?
I don't,
Yeah, I didn't either. I still don't,
I love it. Well,
So,
actually, yours goes number one.
If only.
How funny.
That would be so funny if it did. No, it didn't. And I had no expectation. I still get those like, you get the Apple Music artist reports like, here's somebody, 0 streams, 0, okay, cool. Or 1 stream in like, Kansas City, cool. All right,
To be fair, it wasn't the first thing you sent to me. Like
No, it wasn't. It's in there somewhere. Like, it's like, because obviously there's that thing of like, and we didn't get into this as far as a business aspect. There is this whole thing about a known entity. Like sometimes there's a lot of people that get hired just because they're known, not because of what they do. Just they're known. That guy played on that famous record. Cool. He's not going to play your record the same way because it's not the same thing, but you still want him because he's famous.
Yeah.
I still get a lot of times where I get recommended to a new producer or whatever, and they're like, well, I've never heard of you. It's like, do you have anything you can send me? He's like, sure. I send him a Spotify playlist and, but it's all over the map. It's just like, well, it's more of the like, oh, okay, you play it. Cool. It's like, I can't take your word for it. I got to hear you play or whatever.
Yeah. I will say, okay, and just a quick last statement.
Sure.
The reason that I was interested in your playing was not because you knew how to play in tune, even though your big tuner looks really cool.
Thank you.
You have freaking great taste and just feel.
Thank you.
And that's hard to do without dominating the song as a bassist, I think. So like having character at the same time as just supporting the song, right? So good job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That is one of those things that you learn as you go. I mean, obviously we talk about technical facility and chops and everything else and all that stuff. That's great. I love it when people have that. But what really separates the pros from the amateurs in my book when it comes to making music is taste. It's playing, the whole adage, playing for the song.
Yep.
It's like sometimes, I had this conversation, I got to play Jimmy Kimmel's show several years ago with an artist, Trace Adkins. And Jimmy Earl, sorry, Steve Earl's the artist. Jimmy Earl, bass player, was one of those guys, I knew who he was, not because he plays in the house band, but he played with Chick Corea and all these things, and he's a great player. And I got to meet with him and chat with him, and I knew that song I was playing that night was nothing but long, easy notes. I was doing the most simplistic thing because that's what the song needed.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I couldn't do more, but it's like I also knew enough, and I was taught to no. And I told him, and he said, he was very nice. He's like, man, I'm looking forward to hearing you play. He's like, man, I'm only playing whole notes or whatever. And he looks at me like the mentor he is, hand on shoulder, he goes, hey, I've been paid a lot to play whole notes. Go play those whole notes the right way.
Yeah.
And I just felt so good. And he's like, that's what the song needed. If I'd played anything else, it would have been horrible. So that's what separates, I think, the pros. You learn that skill set of like playing right for the song. And don't ever think that I'm playing the most simplistic thing. That's not an insult. That's what the song needs.
Yeah. Dude, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate
dude,
it.
yeah, this is amazing. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Where do people find you?
In Nashville. No, people, I live
You
in
don't
Bellevue.
want people hunting around finding you.
Yeah, exactly. They're like driving around looking for like the white Latino dude. They can find me. So I do have a website. I don't keep it up much because I feel like that's kind of not the day and age. LuisEspaillat.com, LuisEspaillat, or just Google it. I do have social media. So on Instagram, eBassLuis, EBASSLUIS. Facebook, it's facebook.com/Luis Espaillat Bass. Also TikTok, I do a little bit there, but it's like Luis Espaillat Bass or Luis Espaillat Official. I should really look that up myself. What else did I miss? Oh, if you do X, Twitter kind of thing, it's Luis Bass, LuisBass. But honestly, it's like I'm kind of all over the map. So if you just Google my name, you can probably find most everything there, and you'll probably find some embarrassing pictures there too. But please come find me. I love, like I said, the love-hate relationship with social media, but I like I was talking about the interaction with people. I like people. I like to hear about, like, everybody's got a cool story. Even if you're not in the music business, like, come find me. It's like, I'm very curious, like, oh, what do you do? I really like that stuff. So yeah, please find me.
Dude, I love it. That's awesome. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing with other people you think might gain value from it. My name is Seth Schaefer. This is Behind the Act.